Neil, spoiler alert, you're a scientist.
Indeed.
And legally, I am required to ask you your thoughts about the coronavirus.
Oh.
I suspect you have an opinion.
I'm broadly scientifically literate, but what I will say of this virus, I think we're in the middle of a massive experiment worldwide. The experiment is, will people listen to scientists?
Hello, everyone. I'm Anita Cicero, Deputy Director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, and today I will be your Master of Ceremonies for Event 201. The goal of the Event 201 exercise is to illustrate the potential consequences of a pandemic and the kinds of societal and economic challenges it would pose. The scenario also highlights the very critical role that global business and public-private partnerships play in preparing for and responding to pandemics.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together. How should national leaders, businesses, and international organizations balance the risk of worsening disease that would be caused by the continued movement of people around the world against the risks of profound economic consequence of travel and trade bans?
What is essential, what is non-essential travel, we have to clarify this. Otherwise, if we go down to 20% bookings over a long period, the company will run down. That's a fact.
Public health agencies have issued travel advisories, while some countries have banned travel from the worst affected areas. As a result, the travel sector is taking a huge hit. Travel bookings are down 45%, and many flights have been canceled. A ripple effect is racing through the service sector. Governments that rely on travel and tourism as a large part of their economies are being hit particularly hard.
This morning, big trouble in the skies. The airline industry taking a devastating hit over coronavirus fears. Many airports across the country, ghost towns. Planes littered with empty seats after travelers ground their trips. The airline industry is forecasting up to $113 billion in losses worldwide this year.
Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of dis and misinformation circulating over the internet. In some cases, limited internet shutdowns are being implemented to quell panic.
As the coronavirus spreads across the world, misinformation about the virus is being shared online, and some of it could be coming from foreign governments or other actors.
A top State Department official told the Washington Post last week that Russia has been creating false personas to spread misinformation on social media. The State Department told the Washington Post that Russia is behind swarms of online false personas.
I guess, can users of Twitter, of social media, have faith in something that is labeled manipulated media? In other words, we keep talking about fake personas and fake information, misinformation that is out there, but I guess people are also going to want to know is when a social media company slaps a label on something, can I trust that? Because is that biased? Is that coming from a level of misinformation or dishonesty? How are we to know?
You know, Vlad, you said a key word there, trust.
How much control of information should there be, and by whom? And how can false information be effectively challenged? And what if that false information is coming from companies or from governments?
We're at a moment where the social media platforms have to step forward and recognize the moment to assert that they're a technology platform and not a broadcaster is over. They, in fact, have to be a participant in broadcasting accurate information and partnering with the scientific and health communities.
Will people listen to scientists?
I personally do not believe that trying to shut things down in terms of information is either practical or desirable. And we do have, I think, a couple of strategies that are available to us, one of which is the flood strategy, second of which is relying and informing and equipping trusted sources of information with the facts so they can then pass that on.
Hello, I'm Tom Hanks. The U.S. government has lost its credibility, so it's borrowing some of mine.
At this hospital on Australia's Gold Coast, Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson are being kept in isolation after announcing Wednesday they have the coronavirus. Hanks has been down under in pre-production for his upcoming biopic about Elvis Presley and taking selfies with fans. Warner Brothers, the film studio, says it's working with health agencies to identify and contact anyone who may have come into contact with Hanks.
People who have come in close contact with Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson will now need to self-isolate and quarantine.
On behalf of our center and our partners, the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, and somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. This equation has four factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero, and that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
This video is about doublespeak, what William Lutz, author of the book titled Doublespeak, defines as
doublespeak is language designed to evade responsibility, make the unpleasant appear pleasant, the unattractive appear attractive. Basically, it's language designed to mislead while pretending not to.
What line of work are you in?
Waste management consultant.
Let's say, for example, the person whose treacherous mountain climb my energy bar company sponsored cannibalized his climbing partner. It would be better for me to say something that technically communicates this information, but doesn't sound as terrible. Protein reallocation instead of cannibalism, and Tony Soprano's creative phrase to replace mobster would probably fall under the fourth kind of doublespeak, which is inflated language that is designed to make the simple seem complex, or to give an air of importance to people, things, or situations. So, doublespeak becomes useful obviously when you are obligated to communicate something, but are unable to straight up lie, yet communicating the truth bluntly or as clear as possible doesn't have the listener perceive the information in a way that you would like.
We believe unbelievable progress can be made, both inventing new vaccines and making sure they get out to all the children who need them. We could cut the number of children who die every year from about 9 million to half of that if we have success on it. And the benefits there in terms of reducing sickness, reducing the population growth, it really allows the society a chance to take care of itself.
Reducing the population growth.
The World Health Organization declared the outbreak now a global pandemic yesterday, as you know. Let's talk about the race to find a vaccine. Emergent Biosolutions has joined forces with Novavax to work on a vaccine. The $2.8 million life sciences company is also speeding up the development of a treatment for the novel coronavirus, with hopes of human testing as early as September.
This is Aaron Russo, a filmmaker and former politician. To his left is Nicholas Rockefeller of the infamous Rockefeller banking and business dynasty. After maintaining a close friendship with Nicholas Rockefeller, Aaron eventually ended the relationship, appalled by what he had learned about the Rockefellers and their ambitions.
I got a call one day from an attorney woman I knew, and she said, "Would you like to meet one of the Rockefellers?" I said, "Sure, I'd love to." And we became friends, and he began to divulge a lot of things to me. So he said to me one night, he said that there's going to be an event there, and out of that event, you're going to see we're going to go into Afghanistan, so we can run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We're going to go into Iraq to take the oil and establish a base in the Middle East, and we're going to go into Venezuela and try and get rid of Chavez. And the first two they've accomplished. Chavez they didn't accomplish. And he said you're going to see guys going into caves looking for looking for people that they're never going to find. You know, he was laughing about the fact that you have this war on terror. There's no real enemy. He's talking about how by having this war on terror, you can never win it because it's an eternal war. And so you can always keep taking people's liberties away. And I said, how are you going to convince people that this war is real? He said, but the media. The media can convince everybody it's real. I mean, you know, it's just that you keep talking about things. You keep saying it over and over and over again, and eventually people believe it. You know, you created the Federal Reserve in 1913 through lies. You create 9/11, which is another lie. Through 9/11, then you're fighting a war on terror, and now all of a sudden you go into Iraq, which was another lie, and now they're going to do Iran. You know, and it's all one thing leading to another, leading to another, leading to another. Now, I would say, what are you doing this for? What's the point of this thing? You have all the money in the world you ever want. You have all the power. I said, you know, you're hurting people. It's not a good thing. And he would say, what do you care about the people for? Take care of yourself and you take care of your family. And then I said to him, what are the ultimate goals here? He said, the ultimate goal is to get everybody in this world chipped with the RFID chip. And have all money be on those chips and everything on those chips. And if anybody wants to protest what we do or violate what we want, we just turn off their chip.
That's right, microchipped. In 2005, Congress, under the pretense of immigration control and the so-called war on terrorism, passed the REAL ID Act, under which it is projected by May 2008, you will be required to carry around a federal identification card, which includes on it a scannable barcode with your personal information. However, this barcode is only an intermediary step before the card is equipped with a VeriChip RFID tracking module, which will use radio frequencies to track your every move on the planet. If this sounds foreign to you, please note that the RFID tracking chip is already in all new American passports. And the final step is the implanted chip, which many people have already been manipulated into accepting under different pretenses.
Can you believe what you have been seeing on CNN today, ladies and gentlemen? Can you believe it? Supposedly, a CNN reporter found Osama bin Laden, took a television camera crew with him, went into Osama bin Laden's hideout, interviewed him and his top leadership, his top lieutenants and colonels and generals in their hideout. This is a CNN reporter with a camera crew. And he came out and told everybody, within 3 weeks, Osama bin Laden is going to attack the United States and Israel. Now, don't you think that's kind of strange, folks? You see, because the largest intelligence apparatus in the world, with the biggest budget in the history of the world, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years, and can't find him. A reporter from CNN and his little camera crew got in to Osama bin Laden's secret hideout and conducted an interview. If you don't believe me, tune into CNN. They're probably running it right now as I'm speaking.
Amidst these remote mountains of Afghanistan are the various hiding places of one of the world's most wanted men, Osama bin Laden.
We declared a jihad, a holy war, against the United States government.
because it is unjust, criminal, and tyrannical.
The U.S. State Department calls him one of the most significant financial sponsors of Islamic extremism in the world.
He is a major terrorist financier, and with a large fortune of his own, he has bankrolled terrorist groups and individuals all over the world.
The State Department links the 41-year-old bin Laden to Ramzi Youssef, alleged mastermind of the World Trade Center bombing, New York.
And if you believe it, you are one of the stupidest jerks that ever lived on the face of this earth. And whatever is going to happen that they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden, don't you even believe it. You see, the CIA created Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden is their creation, and he is serving them well. When in hell are all you people going to wake up? Another social illusion, social engineering project to change the minds and the attitudes and the beliefs of the people of the world, and especially the United States, to bring about one world socialist totalitarian government. And I'm telling you, be prepared for a major attack. But it won't be Osama bin Laden. It will be those behind the New World Order who once again want to take the guns and the freedom away from the American people, because we're the only ones left in the world who can oppose the destruction of freedom in the world and the implementation of a one-world totalitarian socialist government, and that is the goal.
They are, and always have been, Luciferian and internationalists. They intend to turn the world into their conception of a Luciferian totalitarian socialist state. The government encouraged the manufacture and importation of military firearms for the criminals to use. This is intended to foster a feeling of insecurity, which would lead the American people to voluntarily disarm themselves by passing laws against firearms. Using drugs and hypnosis on mental patients in a process called Orion, the CIA inculcated the desire in these people to open fire on schoolyards and thus inflame the anti-gun lobby. This plan is well underway and so far is working perfectly. The middle class is begging the government to do away with the Second Amendment.
The suspect in the deadly Florida airport shooting has now been charged and, if convicted, could face the death penalty. It's emerged that police confiscated but later returned a handgun to the Iraq War veteran after he was found not to be mentally ill. Despite reports, he told the FBI about hearing voices urging him to join ISIL.
What's going on? What's going on today, bro?
The demons, man.
Demons?
Voices.
Yeah, no problem.
Voices.
Voices and demons?
Where's the voices?
And you're talking about demons. What are the demons?
The voices.
Well, tell me about it. What are the voices about?
It's another voice, the evil side.
Okay. And how long has that voice been going on?
Years.
Aaron Alexis, we know, had violent outbursts, run-ins with the police, and police now say he also heard voices. The father of the Navy Yard shooter also told police that his son's issues began over a decade ago when he began to suffer from what he says was post-traumatic stress disorder after the September 11th, 2001 attacks.
Lisa and court prosecutors say 24-year-old Ramondo Powell admitted to investigators that he intentionally shot that deputy because, quote, the voices in his head told him to.
A neuropsychologist who ran tests on James Holmes over 3 days told jurors at his murder trial on Thursday there were no signs the shooter was faking mental illness. His court-appointed lawyers say the former neuroscience graduate student, who had never been in trouble before, suffers from schizophrenia. They added voices in his head commanded him to kill, over which he had no control.
Wade Melson called police to ask about his victims. He blamed the voices in his head for the shooting.
It was a chaotic scene. Albuquerque police anxiously searching for Wade Melton, the man they say shot 3 people inside an Albuquerque warehouse.
Also a big story coming out of the South today. We're getting some new information on a deadly standoff in Louisiana. Police say a 20-year-old suspect took 3 bank employees hostage yesterday. Now we're learning more about the suspect. Police say he suffered from paranoid schizophrenia and believe something had been implanted in his head.
He had voices in his head.
It isn't clear why the young man decided to target the bank, but investigators found detailed notes written by the suspect and say robbery was not his intention.
The subject's vehicle struck 23 pedestrians, causing multiple injuries and 1 fatality. 22 victims were removed to local hospitals.
This, of course, is the case of Daniel Drayton, who was arrested in North Hollywood for allegedly kidnapping, raping, and torturing a woman here after he's accused of murdering a woman in New York. And after this interview, it is clear his mental health will likely be a big part of his defense. Calling himself a good person who heard voices in his head, accused killer and confessed serial killer Daniel Drayton, seen here being taken into custody last week in North Hollywood, spoke from the Men's Central Jail in downtown Los Angeles with the New York Daily News.
When did you start hearing Eric Harris's voice?
I have to go to do a massacre or mass shooting.
Aaron Ibarra said the voices started after he started drinking heavily, but soon he drank to quiet the hallucinations. He said those voices also came from God and Satan, calling it their plan.
I was feeling very pushed and paranoid about getting the plan done, because I had to do the plan because I couldn't let it get disrupted.
But what is the best way to sell big government and then world government to a people like ours, historically devoted to an independent republic of limited powers? The answer is simple. In revolutionary literature, the tactic is known as pressure from above and below. It's the strategy that Colonel House laid down in his book, Philip Drew, Administrator. Deliberately create problems, and then offer only those solutions that result in the expansion of government. Create conditions so frightful at home and abroad that the abandonment of personal liberties and national sovereignty will appear as a reasonable price for a return to domestic tranquility and world peace.
So, where are we now? September 11th was the jumpstart for a hegemonic agenda, enabling the possibility of constant global warfare. It was a staged war pretext, no different than the sinking of the Lusitania, the provoking of Pearl Harbor, and the Gulf of Tonkin lie. In fact, if 9/11 wasn't a planned war pretext, it would be an exception to the rule. It has been used to launch 2 unprovoked illegal wars, one against Iraq and the other against Afghanistan. However, 9/11 was a pretext for another war as well. The war against you. The Patriot Act, Homeland Security, the Military Tribunals Act, and other legislations are all completely designed to destroy your civil liberties and protect those in power. Currently in the United States, unannounced to most Americans, your home can be searched without a warrant, without you being home. You can in turn be detained indefinitely with no charges revealed to you, no access to a lawyer, and legally tortured, all under the suspicion that you might be a terrorist. If you need a painted picture of what is happening, let's recognize how history repeats itself. In February 1933, Hitler staged a false flag attack, burning down his own German parliament building, the Reichstag, blaming it on communist terrorists. Within the next few weeks, he passed the Enabling Act, which completely eradicated the German Constitution, destroying people's liberties. He then led a series of preemptive wars, all justified as necessary to maintaining homeland security. It's time to wake up. The people in power go out of their way to make sure you are perpetually misled and manipulated. The majority's perception of reality, especially in the political arena, is not their own. It is shrewdly imposed upon them without them even knowing it.
Nazi scientists, some of them tied to war crimes including horrific concentration camp experiments, brought to the U.S. in a secret program to advance American security interests during the Cold War. It sounds like the plot of a film drama, but it actually happened, and on a large scale. The story is told in the new book, Operation Paperclip. So these were top scientists in the German war effort, sought out by the U.S. military as the war was coming to an end.
That's right. These were Hitler's top weapons makers, and Operation Paperclip became a classified military program to bring them to the United States. It also had a public face, so there was, on the one hand, the truth about the program kept secret, and on the other hand, the idea that we'll tell the public that these are the good Germans.
And the good Germans, but they were dedicated Nazis, the ones you write about. We should say there are many, 1,600 in all, right?
Yes.
You document about 21 of them, dedicated Nazis, some, as I said, involved in horrific stuff. What they did was known, right, to the people to the Americans who were seeking them out?
Certainly to the American military intelligence officers who were interviewing them. The idea that they were involved in war crimes was really necessary to be kept secret, and that's exactly what happened. And so in the book, I think I unveil a lot of the truth about this program that has remained clouded for decades.
So give us an example of one of the figures that intrigued you.
Well, I think one of the worst case scenarios was that the United States military made the decision to bring Walter Schreiber. This was Major General Dr. Walter Schreiber, the Surgeon General of the Third Reich. He wound up at a military facility in Texas.
And doing what?
Well, during the war, Dr. Schreiber had been involved in the vaccine program for the Reich.
Measles now a public health emergency with a surge of those infected across the country. The CDC confirming 101 cases since January 1st. The epicenter of the outbreak, Washington State, with more than 50 cases, most in Clark County, which has the lowest vaccination rates. About a quarter of kindergartners there aren't immunized. The threat so severe, some hospitals arming each entrance with security guards to screen visitors for symptoms of the virus.
Developing right now, MacArthur High School in Hollywood is on lockdown after more than a dozen students and a teacher are infected with some sort of rat.
This is the deadliest outbreak of Ebola on record. The latest figures from the World Health Organization show more than 1,200 people have been infected in Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia.
Concern over the flesh-eating bacteria continues to grow heading into the 4th of July holiday. Doctors say the bacteria is not just in the water.
I understand freedom of religion. We all do. We respect it. I've heard the anti-vaxxers theory, but I believe both are overwhelmed by the public health risk.
We've also learned local first responders are getting new instructions for what they should do in case of a possible Ebola quarantine. KXAN investigator Kevin Schwaller joins us now.
Now a document is saying state or local health services can declare a quarantine of a person or a place. It says that people who try to leave or to get into the quarantine area are guilty of a third-degree felony. It says that an officer may use, quote, reasonable force to secure that area or stop those who are not allowed to move in and out of that space. Now, the document, again, dated more than a week ago, said the department was ordering personal protective equipment.
The plagues are coming whether you are ready or not for them. Matthew chapter 24, verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. The word pestilences here refers to plagues and diseases. These plagues mentioned in the Bible are going to spread across the earth. The global ID tracking on blockchains with vaccine records.
The year is 2017. You're rushed to a hospital unconscious with no ID or medical history, but thanks to a microchip under your skin, it's all there. Science fiction 20 years ago, but a biometric reality today.
The elite and their global government have a plan to lower the Earth's population. They will release these viruses to create global pandemics in order to bring about the justification for mandating vaccine records on the global ID chip. They have been running experiments on the populations for these scenarios for decades. The sub-project of MKUltra called MK Naomi was the code name for the Joint Department of Defense and CIA research program that stemmed from Operation Paperclip, where US government was moving Nazi scientists to the US for secret intelligence programs. These projects were covertly experimenting on the population using biological agents, weaponized diseases, and chemicals which continued on after World War II. Programs such as Guatemala Syphilis Experiment, Operation Sea Spray, Operation LAC, and many other secret programs which continue on to this day. Operation Sea Spray was spraying over the population with known biological agents without telling the population. There should be no surprise why the public has concerns about the chemtrails and the government's denial of such projects.
The Army decided to do what was called a vulnerability test program. And the effort was over a period of 20 years, actually, between 1949 and 1969. When hundreds of tests were conducted over populated areas to see whether, by spraying germs and certain chemicals, whether they would endanger a large population.
The Rockefeller Foundation funded these scientists who ran these projects before and after World War II. The Rockefeller Foundation funded Kaiser Wilhelm Institute of Human Heredity and Eugenics in Germany. The Nazi scientists framed all their eugenics and human experimentation models based off these US models and work from the US scientists, as Hitler himself also claimed. The chief Nazi scientist was brought back to the US in Operation Paperclip, who was originally trained at Rockefeller Institute. The name of the chief Nazi scientist in Operation Paperclip is Erich Traub. Erich Traub was mentored by Richard Schoep of Rockefeller Institute on vaccines and viruses, and he was extensively working on the bird and swine flu. It was Richard Schoep at the Rockefeller Institute who identified the influenza A virus. The influenza A virus can spread from animals to humans. One of these viruses is the H5N1 virus. It is designated as an influenza A subtype. Erich Traub was working with the MKUltra program on MK Naomi and using the H1N1 and H5N1 virus. He was working on the weaponization of them at Fort Detrick, Plum Island, and other top-secret labs in the US. These outbreaks of the H1N1 and H5N1 are a result of them experimenting on the population and using their vaccine programs that are still carried out to this day. It is believed the weaponization of Lyme disease was used at this research lab as well and escaped. The US House of Representatives recently had ordered an investigation into the DoD experimentations during the time of MKUltra from 1950 to 1975. But as we know, the records according to MK Naomi are either classified, were being destroyed by Richard Helms, the CIA director, or were never recorded as stated in the MK Naomi documents. You can tell by the maps of the Lyme disease spreading that these tick infections are centered around the regions of Fort Detrick and Plum Island.
Vaccine given to more than 500,000 American troops that served in the first Gulf War. Dr. Kano from the Centers for Disease Control applauds this invention. This next government document was obtained by lawyers for the victims I just described. Here you can see the array of biological weapons being tested on the prisoners in Texas as overseen by Baylor College of Medicine. Baylor, at that time, boasted having George H.W. Bush serving on their board of directors. The dates listed here also coincide with the alleged transition of America's offensive biowarfare program to defensive. Notice the mycoplasma. Both defensive and offensive studies were conducted. A vaccine study and a hall study in which prisoners were actually exposed to this airborne agent.
Lab-grown killer mosquitoes are about to invade 20 states in the U.S., but you might not want to squash these bugs.
Some of these pestilences are weaponized insects and are also a part of the testing from the Rockefeller Institute, who are heavily involved with the Zika virus and other weaponizing of mosquitoes. The Rockefellers are the main supporters of global depopulation plans, and ironically also spearhead the mosquito research of Zika, which causes birth defects, premature birth, and miscarriage, thus helping lower the population. The government is also helping support the hybridization of mosquitoes. Yale University recently reported that the genetically modified mosquitoes in Brazil backfired. Coincidentally, there are now new reports of rare mosquito viruses spreading and killing people. And how much of this is coming from releases from labs is still unknown.
The whole agenda is to create a one world government where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips.
The agenda to groom and controlled release a mass pandemic to bring about the microchipping vaccine records is on the forefront of the talking points for the New World Order, and it's seen all over the media. They are now promoting the apocalypse itself, saying that 80 million are at risk for the next wipeout that will leave humanity in ruins. There are others who are working on this who believe in lowering the population as well, like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who are also major forerunners for vaccines. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have also been caught in major scandals in India, one of the largest populations on the planet. There is no telling how many of these operations are ongoing from these organizations worldwide. But the H1N1 and the H5N1 tests could be covertly going on against the will of the people of India, Africa, and China by the same organizations. These experiments and agendas are ongoing worldwide through organizations such as Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Health Organization, and Gavi. The Food and Drug Administration had approved the Verichip RFID implant tag. They used the explanation that doctors hoped this device would help become a solution for patients without medical or vaccine records. Positive ID, which bought Verichip, has long worked on putting immunization records and state Medicaid records connected to this implant.
And we'll be faced with equally consequential decisions in the 21st century. Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that, mark my words, before your tenure is over.
Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has worked on field tests that use mobile phone-based vaccine registries that use biometric systems for immunization records keeping. The use of cryptocurrency blockchains for tracking supply chains is now the goal for linking the vaccine records and the identity. Their goal is to put the digital identity onto the supply chain using cryptocurrency blockchains with vaccine records to track everybody globally. Bill Gates funded the Denominator Group, who are also working on this agenda. The Gates Foundation is also in full support of the Better Than Cash Alliance. This project's goal is to digitize the economy with the same global ID chains and digital cashless payments. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation worked directly with Gavi on this global goal for vaccines and blockchain for tracking vaccine records. These core groups are working towards implanting everybody with a global ID with vaccine records. The ID 2020 project is working with the Rockefeller Foundation and Gavi on this digital identity with vaccine records. A sub-project of this group is working with them also called the Identity Foundation. The Identity Foundation works with Accenture, Microsoft, ID 2020, and IBM on the setting up of this tracking system. IBM historically has done this in the past with the Hollerith machines, tattooing tracking numbers for the machines onto the arm of the people that they were putting into concentration camps under the Nazis.
All the banks and financial institutions are running on IBM punch cards. These cards were like bullets. If IBM would have just stopped printing the cards, it would have been like rifles without bullets, but they wouldn't stop printing the cards. In fact, the Auschwitz tattoo began as an IBM number. It began when the prisoner card that each person had, which was identical to what the IBM system could take, was actually tattooed on their skin.
This same IBM is working towards a more high-tech method of this system, identical to that of the Nazi eugenics program. Accenture and Microsoft founded the ID 2020 program. They are working on the global biometric exit entry systems. Accenture and Microsoft had set up the Department of Homeland Security's biometric security exit and entry systems that were under Obama, and this was fast-tracked and enforced under Trump's executive order.
We will finally complete the biometric entry-exit visa tracking system, which we need desperately. For years, Congress has required biometric entry-exit visa tracking systems but it has never been completed. The politicians are all talk, no action, never happens, never happens. Hillary Clinton, all talk. Unfortunately, when there is action, it's always the wrong decision. Do you ever notice? In my administration, we will ensure that this system is in place. And I will tell you, it will be on land, it will be on sea, it will be in air. We will have a proper tracking system.
The name of the program in the U.S. is the Real ID Act. It was set up under the Patriot Act from 9/11. Accenture was also contracted to help set up the FEMA systems for the risk mapping. This risk mapping was set up for the management systems of FEMA to work with the DHS in the event of pandemic emergencies where the systems could be used to get everybody chipped. FEMA has set up the planning for the pandemics with Accenture based on the model to divide the regions of the U.S. up into 10 quarantine zones using the biometric exit entry systems to enforce the global ID. Accenture and Microsoft with ID 2020 had ran a test on this system. They used the Jordan Syrian refugees camps with the United Nations as a test model where millions were put into camps and used this biometric system. The systems for the ID 2020 use a verified certification for the global ID, which is called the Mark. The prophecy gives a warning in the end times that Christians will be put into prisons. Revelation chapter 2 verse 10. Do not fear any of these things which you are about to suffer. Indeed, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested, and you will have tribulation 10 days. Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. It is interesting to note that the Bible prophecy says that the prisons, testing, and tribulation is 10 days. And this coincides with Ebola quarantine, and the time of Ebola to show symptoms is also 10 days. The CDC is involved with FEMA to establish quarantine zones alongside the U.S. government military, which has plans for military intervention at the point of civil disorder or national emergency threats.
Now to a controversial bill resurfacing in Congress. The FEMA camp bill allows the government to run at least 6 military installations when a national emergency is declared. These emergency centers would be run by FEMA under the command of the Secretary of Homeland Security. A few years ago, a similar bill was presented in Congress, but it didn't go anywhere over concerns that the broad language can lead to sweeping, unchecked government power.
To my right, this was previously was a soybean field, and this little new cut road divided this field. And the right side of the road was filled with which I thought was portable toilets. I never looked at them that close. Same in color, maybe black, but which was an odd color. And I was sitting there going over my notes, and a van pulled alongside of me that turned out to be the property owner. And he greeted me, and he was by himself, and so we had a good little dialogue there, and I asked him about the field of black boxes. What were they? Because I'd never seen anything like that. And his statement was that if he told me, I would be one of few people in Madison, Georgia that knew about them. And he says they're disposable coffins, I believe he told me. And he says there's 100, at that time, he said there was 125,000 there. And they were stacked, he told me 15 high. I asked him who owned them, and he stated that the CDC owned them and that they were leasing his land for storage. And he said his brother worked with the CDC in Atlanta and had been asked by the CDC to do a 3-year extension to place temporary morgues all across the nation.
Reagan was elected to the presidency, he installed Louis Giuffrida as head of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Giuffrida was an old cold warrior from Reagan's California days whose specialty was suppression of unrest and dissent. Giuffrida, North, and George Bush began to turn FEMA into an instrument of domestic anti-terrorism.
You're dealing with a group of people in the Reagan administration who equated political dissent with treason, and who cannot differentiate between emergency procedures, which I think everyone agrees are necessary, and suppressing political dissent. And with North and Poindexter and Casey, you had a group of people who saw Americans who disagree with them as the enemy.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked.
The original plan for this was called Rex 84, which moved into Operation Garden Plot, and after 9/11 became known as Concept Plan 2502. This plan used databases of possible suspects to be rounded up called the ADEX list. The ADEX list is a list that is used to round up possible threats during these plans. One of the roundups that use this list is the Japanese internment camps. These lists are now a part of a larger development after 9/11. The Digital Collection System Network, or DCSNet, is used in conjunction with programs like PRISM from the NSA in order to mass surveillance for these threats and put them into lists. They use these lists to put any possible threat onto a target file as an extremist or domestic terrorist. Their threat targets on this list for the Department of Homeland Security has allowance for the authorized military force against those people listed as threats on this list. The National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, which is currently upheld, allows for the authorizing of the indefinite military detention of civilians, including U.S. citizens, without habeas corpus or due process, contained in the authorization for use of military force against terrorists. Obama with the Department of Homeland Security set up a Global Combating Extremism Summit, which led to the foundation of the Global Combating Extremism Center in Saudi Arabia, which Trump helped open. This global center is called Etadel and works with tracking down people they consider extremists. It has access to the echelon of the 14 Eyes International Intelligence Coalition. The DHS Right-Wing Extremism Manual of 2009 lists people who believe in end-times prophecy, people who believe in a coming New World Order, or other various conspiracy theories are possible terrorists. The ones they view as extremists are Christians who hold fundamental end-times beliefs, and now the narrative is turning towards anti-vaxxers are terrorists. They will put those who believe in the rejection of the Mark of the Beast global ID into this category as climate deniers, anti-vaxxers, religious extremists, conspiracy theorists, and anti-government domestic terrorists. The vaccine no opt-out debate based on religion is to set the tone for no religious exemption from the Mark of the Beast because it contains vaccine records. This is why the Department of Homeland Security has begun databasing media outlets, journalists, and bloggers who are exposing these agendas. They are preparing to target those who expose this agenda as terrorists spreading propaganda and fueling terrorist recruitment. The United Nations is also involved with working with the tech giants in order to censor the information outletting of this agenda. They are working to control the narrative and target the population who will not comply with the global ID and vaccine records. They will list them as terrorists when the mass epidemics roll out for the global ID vaccine records and mandates that will be pushed by the World Health Organization.
I know we want to think about how can we just avoid this, get away, but the fact is that the Bible is true and the Word is true, and it has warned us of these things and the increase of these things. We see with Ebola, this article, yahoo.com, October 16th, the countdown to save the world from Ebola. The UN has issued a stark warning that if the world does not get Ebola under control within 60 days, we face an, quote, unprecedented situation for which we don't have a plan, end of quote. You talk about fear. You know, the World Health Organization is saying that they issued a report stating that Ebola is running faster than us and it is winning the race as it starts to spread across the world.
This World Health Organization epidemic agenda will be used to deceive the whole world into getting the Mark of the Beast global ID with vaccine records on it. The Bible says that the merchants of the earth are the great men of the earth. These merchants are the large corporations which include tech giants and pharmaceutical corporations. We know the big pharma corporations are some of the largest on the planet involved in this. The prophecy says that by the medicine or health industry the whole world will be deceived. Revelation chapter 18 verse 23. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all the nations deceived. The word here for sorceries is found in the Greek. Pharmakia, the root word where we get the word pharmacy or medicine, is the word here used for sorceries in this Bible prophecy. The way that all the nations are deceived in the end is through the deception of the Mark of the Beast coming to the whole world through the support of the World Health Organization, which has authority over all the nations in a global pandemic. The G7 is also mentioned in the end times. It is the 7 heads of the beast in the Bible prophecy. The G7 also backed the Gavi Alliance agenda for vaccination records with the World Health Organization. The Global World Health Organization models enforcing vaccines with the global ID will be mandated over the 10 World Sustainable Development Regions of the United Nations. These regions are also mentioned in the Bible prophecy of the 10 horns in the book of Revelation, and in the book of Daniel, the 10 toes of the feet of iron and clay. These Sustainable Development Regions are backed by the World Health Organization and the United Nations. You can see by the 10 Sustainable Development Regions that the economic zones will be overlaid with the World Health Organization regions. This grants the enforcement of the vaccine records on the global ID over the 10 zones with environmental tracking, economy tracking, and with the vaccine record tracking for the health epidemic. The World Health Organization is one of the 4 permanent founding members of the Gavi Alliance on the Global ID 2020. The World Health Organization also supports the Sustainable Development Goals, which they suggest for achieving the agenda is to enforce the universal health care over all the nations. The G20 has economic authority over these 10 Sustainable Development Zones, and the G7 are the leaders of this G20 alliance. The economic goal of the G20 for the meeting of 2018 was to set the tone for the global onboarding of this digital identity. In the year 2019 G20 meeting, the G7, or the 7 heads of the beast, had set the KYC mandate for the global ID for blockchain payments over these 10 regions through the G20. This KYC is known as the certification mark. Even the people in the cryptocurrency culture are boasting of these payment implant chips as being the mark of the beast. The Sustainable Development Agenda is the goal of mapping out the Earth into 10 regions and monitoring them by artificial intelligence for both environment and economy by mandating the biometric ID implants called the Mark of the Beast. The 7 heads of the beast are the G7 nations, and they are pushing for the lead in the sustainable development for the global economy. This is the platform for the 7 heads and the 10 horns in the prophecy in the book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 13 verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. The 7 heads of the beast are the 7 kingdoms known as the G7: Italy, France, Germany, Britain, Canada, Japan, and the United States. Revelation chapter 17 verse 9. And here's the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. These 7 mountains are 7 powerful kingdoms. Likewise, God called ancient Babylon a mountain because it was a powerful kingdom as well. Jeremiah 51:25. Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Lord, which destroyeth all the earth. I will stretch out mine hand upon thee, and roll thee down from the rocks, and I will make thee a burnt mountain. God calls his kingdom the great mountain, because it is the greatest kingdom of all. Daniel chapter 2 verse 35. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, and no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is how we know the 7 mountains are 7 powerful kingdoms. The G7 is leading in the sustainable development in the global economy. GulfTimes.com, May 22, 2016. G7 Summit will focus on sustainable growth.
G7 leaders will discuss the next steps towards the implementation of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals set out in the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development adopted in September 2015. Revelation chapter 12 verse 3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. The 7 crowns on the 7 heads are the G7 leaders of these 7 kingdoms. Now looking to the 10 horns. Revelation 17, 12, and 13. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These 10 kings have yet to be given dominion over their 10 kingdoms. These 10 kingdoms have been prepared through the sustainable development. The Club of Rome has long been working towards the dividing of the planet into 10 regions for the monitoring of the planet's resources for the Sustainable Development Goals. Edward Pastel and Mihailo Mesarovic had long worked towards the dividing of the planet into 10 regions and monitoring the planet using computer analysis. In their report, Mankind at the Turning Point, the second report to the Club of Rome, in their report, it says, the second report seeks to show that the world is at the end of an era of independence and that an integrated plan of controlled organic growth is called for to combat recurrent crises. Section 8. Limits to independence. 8.1. Given that global cooperation offers a much more favorable probability for future development than conflict, all nations must face up to the corollary of increasing interdependence, which entails an era of limits to independence. Section 9. A possible solution. 9.1. The computer analysis of the world food problem takes account inter alia of differing regional dietary requirements, the availability of type of food in the various regions, of climate and cultural factors, the lack of essential dietary components, the type of land and amount available, the existing economic and human resources. Section 11. Epilogue. 11.2. A new global ethic is required comprising A. Individual awareness of membership of the world community, B. Responsibility in the use of material resources, and C. A harmonious relationship with nature. In William Cooper's book, Behold a Pale White Horse, released in 1991, there is a Club of Rome report that talks about the 10 divided regions, and specifically mentions Pastel and Mesarovic as the authors. This map released in 1991 is very similar to the map released in 2009 in the Sustainable Development Report. Pastel and Mesarovic is also mentioned in the book Crisis of Global Sustainability by Tapio Kanninen. The Birth and Evolution of the Club of Rome on page 11 talks about the 10 divided regions. In the book Integrated Global Models of Sustainable Development Volume 2, edited by Akira Anishi in 2009, on page 107, it details these 10 regions. Taking into consideration that the climate change issue is of genuine global character, we need another technologically detailed energy model, which covers all world regions on the globe. In response to this specific need, on the basis of New Earth 21 model, Dynamic New Earth 21 model has been developed with the basic framework described in the following sections. The technological potentials are often constrained by regional factors such as sectoral structure of energy consumption and the availability of natural resources. For a logical and consistent technology assessment, it is necessary to identify energy systems of different world regions. Dynamic New Earth 21 was formulated as a multi-regional model, and the whole world is geopolitically divided into 10 regions as seen in Figure 1. The Global Innovation Exchange.org suggests the system change for Professor Akira Anishi's model, creating Electronic United Nations, EUN. The Paris Climate Pact in December 2015 was a historical success with 195 nations pledges to reduce the greenhouse gases warming. Their pledges need to be improved significantly with rigorous simulation studies as interlinking their models together via broadband internet as forming the Electronic African Union and ultimately the Electronic United Nations. This will provide regular and transparent global cooperation with collective and shared responsibilities in democratic fashion. The goal here for the sustainable development is to make every individual accountable for both their environmental impact and their economic impact in the 10 regions, and to have them tracked by artificial intelligence. The Sustainable Development Goals established by Barack Obama and Pope Francis at the United Nations are the laws that govern over the 10 kingdoms, these 10 regions. Within the 10 regions, Pope Francis and Obama are both working towards the hubs of the smart cities within the 10 regions. C40.org. Global Mayors, Pope Find Common Purpose, July 21, 2015. Following the launch of the encyclical letter on the care for our common home, Laudato Si, and in the lead up to the Paris Climate Change Conference, Pope Francis today convened more than 60 local leaders from around the world, including 20 C40 mayors, to discuss the pressing topics of climate change and sustainable development in cities. These smart cities will be used as hubs for the artificial intelligence harvesting information within the 10 regions. Barack Obama is working directly with Pope Francis on the smart cities. Whitehouse.gov. Administration announced new Smart Cities initiative to help communities tackle local challenges and improve city services September 14, 2015. This is the infrastructure for the 10 kingdoms. Barack Obama and Pope Francis at the United Nations Sustainable Development Summit in 2015 established a technology facilitation mechanism. The technology facilitation mechanism calls for a scientific solution to meet all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals in all of the 10 regions. In January, the United Nations established a 10-member group to support the technology facilitation mechanism. This 10-member group is tasked with supporting the technology facilitation mechanism and establishing the scientific solution to meet all of the Sustainable Development Goals in all of the 10 regions. The current rotation of the 10-member group are not the 10 kings, but this is the seat of the 10 kings. The 10 science czars have no kingdom as of yet, but they will be given power over the 10 regions when they back the solution to meet all of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is the mark of the beast, the global ID implant. These 10 science czars have one mind. They are all corporately working towards finding a scientific solution to meet all of the Sustainable Development Goals in the 10 regions. They will give their power over the 10 regions and support the beast. This hour mentioned in Revelation chapter 17 verse 12 is the hour that the mark of the beast is introduced. This is the same hour mentioned in Revelation chapter 3 verse 10. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. Those who are anchored in Christ will not receive the mark of the beast, and we will not be tempted. Barack Obama at the United Nations Conference in Paris, talking about the sustainable development, is seen using words that are identical to the Bible prophecy talking about the mark of the beast.
Our understanding of the ways human beings disrupt the climate advances by the day. No nation, large or small, wealthy or poor, 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 is immune to what this means.
The mark of the beast is seen in Revelation chapter 13 verse 16 and 17. The mark of the beast is the scientific solution to meet all of the Sustainable Development Goals. This scientific technology will be found in the hand and in the forehead. The mark of the beast is the biometric implant ID into the hand, which is a solution for the Sustainable Development Goal 16. Their goal is to have the global ID identify people to the artificial intelligence, while the brain chips inside the forehead will give people access to artificial intelligence amplification through internet directly into their head. The global accountability mechanism for resource tracking for everybody on the planet for the Sustainable Development Goals is why we see in Revelation chapter 13 verse 16 the Bible prophecies say causeth all, both small and great. Everybody in society must comply to the global responsibility through their tracking of their resources through the mark of the beast. Both small consumers and large corporations must comply with this. The Sustainable Development Goal number 1 is eradicating poverty, and this is why we see the Bible prophecies say both rich and poor are required to take the mark of the beast. The Sustainable Development is said to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. The Identification for Development program working through the World Bank and the United Nations for the Sustainable Development Goal 16 is establishing a global economic monitoring system under the excuse of eradicating terrorism in Goal 16A. This move is setting up a digital economy that will be tracked through the Global ID implant. BetterThanCash.org. The Better Than Cash Alliance is a partnership of governments, companies, and international organizations that accelerates the transition from cash to digital payments in order to reduce poverty and drive inclusive growth. Based at the United Nations, the Alliance has over 50 members. works closely with other global organizations, and is an implementing partner for the G20 Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion. The alliance is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Citi Foundation, Ford Foundation, MasterCard, Omidyar Network, United States Agency for International Development, and Visa. The United Nations Capital Development Fund serves as the secretariat. This transition from cash to digital payments through the biometric ID implant is the reason why in the digital economy you will not be able to buy or sell without the mark. Eradicating human trafficking, which is modern-day slavery, is a part of Sustainable Development Goal 5, Sustainable Development Goal 8, and Sustainable Development Goal 16. Radio Vaticana.va. Pope and mayors signed Declaration on Climate and Trafficking, July 22, 2015. The signing of the document followed a meeting Tuesday afternoon at the Vatican between Pope and the mayors who are attending a 2-day workshop entitled, quote, Modern Slavery and Climate Change, end of quote, organized by the Chancellor of the Pontifical Academies of Science and Social Sciences. Radio Vaticana. Pope Francis addresses Judges Summit on Human Trafficking and Organized Crime, June 3, 2016. Pope Francis went on to say that the reason for the Judges Summit was to help fulfill Goal 8.7 of the United Nations' new Sustainable Development Goals, that is, to eradicate forced labor, modern slavery, and human trafficking. The Global ID implant will be promoted as the scientific solution to eradicate modern-day slavery. This is why the Bible prophecy of the Mark of the Beast mentions both free and bond, both free and slave. The warning about taking the mark of the beast is clear. Revelation chapter 14 verse 9 and 10. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. In the Pope's encyclical Laudato Si for the Sustainable Development, he calls for a global political authority to manage over the world's economy. As Benedict XVI has affirmed in his continuity with the social teaching of the Church, quote, to manage the global economy, to revive economies hit by the crisis, to avoid any deterioration of the present crisis and the greater imbalances that would result, to bring about integral and timely disarmament, food security and peace, to guarantee the protection of the environment and to regulate migration. For all this, there is urgent need of a true world political authority. End of quote.
The leaders of the world are going to use the global ID with the vaccine records as a part of this deception for the mark of the beast. Revelation chapter 16 verse 1 and 2. And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the 7 angels, Go your ways, and pour out the vials of the wrath of God upon the earth. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth. And there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. Just as the plagues of Egypt that fell upon the people and they had received boils, so shall it be in the end when those who take the mark of the beast will suffer the wrath of God, and they will have grievous noisome sores as well.
The seat for this world political authority is Jerusalem. The European Union will grant a member state status to the special regime. The representative over this regime will be given a number inside the European Union Parliament. The Bible prophecy talks about a number. Revelation 13, 17, and 18. And that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. When the special regime over Jerusalem is appointed a special representative number in the parliament, it will be the number of a man, a number of a representative. It will be the number of his name. Name means authority. It will be the number of his authority. That seat number will be the seat number 666. When they push to take Jerusalem and enforce the mark of the beast, the 144,000 Jews will reject the mark of the beast and anger the 10 kings. Revelation chapter 17 verse 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. They will unite with an Islamic invasion and take Jerusalem. They will establish from that seat in Jerusalem the global political authority to manage over the world's economy, call for the mark of the beast, and Jerusalem, that woman, will become the capital for their global power structure, making Jerusalem have dominion over all of the kingdoms of the world. Revelation chapter 17, verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. This woman is Jerusalem, having dominion, sitting over the 10 regions and the G7 as the capital of their new world order.